Aloha and welcome to the informational briefing of the Senate Special Committee on Accountability and focusing on procurement. Today is Wednesday, August 4th at 1:30 p.m. We are in conference room 211 with members of the committee. Presenters are joining us remotely via video conference. I'm Sharon Moriwaki, chair of this special committee, and joining me are members Senator Donovan De La Cruz here in room 211, and on remotely Senator Michelle Kidani, and other members are Senator Don Mercado Kim and Senator Kurt Favela, who will be joining us shortly. They are to come. Also joining us remotely is Interim State Procurement Officer Bonnie Kahakui, whom we asked to join us as we seek to improve our procurement policies and procedures. Before proceeding with the briefing, a few housekeeping announcements. This briefing is being streamed live on YouTube. You can find links to the briefings on the live and on-demand video page of the Capitol website under the Special Committee on Procurement webpage, which will include reference documents and reports. This committee's specific charge is to improve the state procurement and contracting policies and procedures with a focus on how we can procure goods, services, and construction more quickly with clear, fair, and consistent standards and procedures so we can deliver quality performance that is also within budget and on time to serve the public. As background, this committee builds on the work and discussion in the Government Operations Committee last session. Last session, we addressed a number of bills to address these concerns. Two, for example, signed into law by the governor, are one, performance reviews on construction contracts, so all departments can benefit from the experience of others toward the best performing contractors for our state work. And two, on bid protests, setting deadlines for departments to assess and decide on protests. This was not to preclude protests, but to improve our procurement procedures and to use these protests, if not frivolous, to improve our procedures. Joining us today for our first session is the Department of Accounting and General Services. Comptroller Kurt Otagura and his team will brief us on their procurement and bid protest procedures, the challenges they face, and suggested recommendations for addressing them. So Comptroller Kurt Otagura, please proceed. First, introduce your staff who are with you to present. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Moriwaki, Vice Chair De La Cruz, Senator Kidani. We appreciate the opportunity to present. I'm Kurt Otagura, State Comptroller. And with me, as you mentioned earlier, we have our Acting Chief Procurement Officer, Bonnie Kahakui. In the Department of Accounting and General Services, I'm joined by our Deputy Comptroller, Audrey Hidano, and our Public Works Administrator, Chris Kinimaka, who has the entire team there within the Public Works area. So we appreciate this opportunity to share about procurement. We all went through a lot in the last year. I was comforted myself to know that we had a lot of experience in State Procurement Office who handled a lot of challenges unknown. And so their practices and their experience was really evident as the state procured a lot of things. So as we continue to have these challenges, just know that the Procurement Office does effectively operate, and we'll hear more from Bonnie in a little second. On the construction side, as you asked, the Public Works Division is prepared to go over their procurement processes and explain some of the intricacies involved in construction, specifically as it pertains to how they procure, bid protests, time that it takes. And so we really do embrace this opportunity to present our challenges and our solutions to some of these challenges. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to probably our State Procurement Office and Bonnie first to talk about more of the statewide overarching aspects of procurement. So Bonnie?
Thank you. Bonnie.
Thank you. Thank you, Kurt. Good afternoon, Chair Moriwaki and members of the committee. Bonnie Kahakui for the State Procurement Office. I'd like to share my screen with you. You received this slide presentation earlier, but I'd like to share it with you and go over some of these details. Okay.
Screen share.
Okay. Can we all see my screen?
Oh, not yet. Not yet.
Not yet. It says I'm okay, let's see. There we go. Share.
Oh,
Are
okay.
we sharing?
Uh-huh.
Okay, great.
Wait, is that your screen? It's Dag's
Yes,
screen? Okay.
it is. Okay. So yes, that's my screen. Okay, I'd like to begin with a very high-level overview of DAGS, which includes 14 divisions under the comptroller and the 12 attached agencies. HRS 103D-208 allows the Chief Procurement Officer to delegate procurement activities to any department head within its jurisdiction. Department heads, in turn, delegate to their divisions and program administrators and attached agencies, who further delegates it to personnel within their agencies. Currently, we have approximately 5,500 delegations. Departments are required to submit an SPO Form 36, a Delegation Procurement Authority, for specific methods of procurement and to designate them as buyers and/or procurement officers. In DAGS alone, we have 790 delegations. Of those, 103 are delegated in our e-procurement system, Hypro. DAGS has a very specific defined process before delegation can be given to any employee. So it goes from new employees, it goes routing through each of the administrators, goes back to ASO for comptroller's approval, and then it gets sent to us, and before we put them on the active list. In addition to active, they do have to tell us if they're revised or deleted. In DAGS alone, as this is shown, we have approximately 30 procurement officers, normally as defined by their positions. Before anyone can conduct or participate in any procurement activity, they must take mandatory training for their respective method of procurement. The SPO website describes all the classes that are required for each method of procurement, along with general classes that we make available to everyone. Just as an example, in FY 2020, we had over 13,000 attendees in our on-demand training. And in 2021, we had a little over 8,100. I'm sure most of this was COVID related. People were not working or concerned with other opportunities. This next slide just shows all the procurement classes that is offered by the State Procurement Office. We have general classes about procurement basics and ethics and pricing. Then we have specific procurement classes on goods, services, and construction, as well as the health and human services. Here we go. This slide just shows you the number of classes or the number of employees trained in each class. Obviously, some of them will be duplicated because these are not unique identifiers. One person can take all of these classes. And that just goes on to show the number of, again, goods and service construction and the health and human services classes. In addition to the on-demand training, every year, except this year, we conducted a SBO conference to discuss procurement issues and highlighted specific areas such as sustainable procurement and e-procurement. I know that the committee was focused on the high dollar procurements like the IFBs and the RFPs, but I wanted to just show you this slide to show you that even in the small purchase procurements, there are specific policies and procedures that all executive department agencies must follow. So regardless if it's under 5,000, 15,000, or greater than 15,000, these are the procedures that they follow. And it's the same with IFBs, the multi-step IFBs and RFPs. There are processes in each step. Each department may have different pre-approval processes and post-approval processes, but within each method, there are certain steps that need to be taken along the way. In the protest area, which I know that you want to be focused on, there are protest procedures and steps along the way, all the way from when the protest is received, how they're handled, and then if it needs to go to DCCA. We'll obviously be updating this slide now that we have the new act, which requires a 75-day response requirement. Some of the challengings that we've heard, not only from DAGs, is the lack of qualified staff, retaining employees, and recruiting new employees. We often hear, we just don't have enough people to do it, or we don't have enough qualified people to do it, or the people who used to do it have moved on or retired. Oftentimes it's not the procurement staff that is procuring, but other personnel like the engineers, the secretaries, the program managers. Program procurement is often listed other duties as assigned, and it's particularly challenging when staff only have to do this once a year, once every other year. They don't do this on a continuous basis, so they fall out of habit. They're not kept up to date with the new procurement policies and procedures or laws. So that has been a challenge all along. And Chris can elaborate a little more on that. So some of our suggestions would be to centralize the procurement unit within each department. If there is a core group of people within each department whose job is dedicated to do procurement, I think that they would solve a lot of problems. This is their lifeline. This is their career. They're trained specifically to do certain methods of procurement. And in addition to that, we need to make sure that these people are properly trained. And we would propose a procurement certification program. Will it take money? Absolutely. Will it take time? Yes, it will. But if we want to get to the level where we have dedicated procurement professionals, I think this is where we need to head. Oops, that's okay. I think I've stopped sharing now. I think that's all.
You talked, I have one. You talk about the centralized procurement unit within each department. There are, and I saw 5,500 procurement officers, I guess, throughout the state. Are there sufficient numbers within each department to set up such a unit and training them for certification so that there is consistency in their procurement processes as well as contracting?
Probably not. As I said, some of these people are program managers or clerical staff, so they don't have, some of them don't have dedicated staff to do this. So they're pulling people from their other primary jobs to do procurement. So it would require increase in personnel as well if we want them just to be doing procurement.
And do you have an assessment of, I see a number of training sessions that you have, courses. Do you have that categorized? So, one is, okay, at least, help us process the paper all the way to actually having the authority to make decisions, and at the higher levels of decision-making or recommendation to the chief procurement officer for the department. Are there courses that they need to take, be certified in, so in fact they're following the law and procedures and rules for procurement?
We would have to build a certification program for them. Right now, we've got them doing the mandatory courses, which are, small purchase, IFBs, RFPs, professional services. We do have those basics, but in addition to that, we would need to make sure that when we build this program, we have all the other classes involved in that, as well as contract administration, procurement ethics, as that would be mandatory for them to be certified. There are several states, well, there are more than several, there's a bunch of states that have certification programs, and they actually go through a very rigorous certification. I mean, we're talking multiple day conferences, training, testing, recertification every so many years. So that's something that we would have to build on.
Okay, members, any other? I just want more. Would you be able to give us some kind of indication of what is needed for having a certified procurement officer in each department at that level? You can have staff helping you, but what kinds of competencies, what kinds of training should they have, and certification, what that would take? Would you have something like that, whether it's from this jurisdiction or others?
Which state, more importantly from the policy perspective, which state law would we emulate if we wanted to start something like that? Because then that way, once that's established, and some of the things you're talking about would have to be, but
Yeah.
we would have to pass some of these things at the state level.
Yes. So we could get some information from various states. to
Yeah, and
find
if you
out-
could do a
That would be
comparison even, so if you find that in certain sections of components are better in one state, another section of the components are better, if you can do a comparison as we look to draft some type of legislation, then we can take the best of what's out there instead of just taking initially, because the easier thing for us to do is to take one of these states and random to some extent, or some feedback, and just introduce the bill and get feedback through the committee hearing process.
Sure. So we can do that. We can do some of our own research and see what they have. So what I do know that there are some states that have dedicated training staff within their procurement office though. So that also will need to be addressed. But we can get that for you, get some ideas of what each of the states do.
Yeah, even though it may sound to some extent that it's going to cost us money, the amount of protests and the amount of delays, the amount of projects that end up we spend money on and we don't complete, hopefully all of that gets minimized by some investment in the earlier stages.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to go through. You said that 12,000 were last year, 8,000 this year.
Training.
Yes.
So what happens? So that means people are not up to date with the training.
No, it's just that they're not necessarily up to date with their training. They may have taken the training previously, but did not say retake the classes, or they did not, or there were just less new employees that have taken any of the training.
Okay.
Because there are a lot of people that will take it multiple times because they only do it once a year, or once every 2 years. They'll retake
Yes.
a class.
So-
And
Yeah, but how many people take the class if they take the class? Because I don't know what the requirements are. If they take the class, when they get delegated the authority, and then they
They
don't
have
ever
to
take it
take it.
again.
Yes, that is an issue. Currently, we do not require them to have to retake it unless we see that there's
No,
been
yeah.
a
So-
severe procurement violation, and then we tell them, as part of the corrective action, they have to retake the classes.
Yeah, so that could be problematic versus the certification process that's being mentioned would require an update of the certificate every X amount of years.
Correct.
Yeah.
So Bonnie,
So that
I've
would be
heard, I've
something
heard
built
that,
in.
that some clerks are doing the procurement, and is that a violation that they need to be trained before they can actually touch the processing of procurement?
And they are, even if they are clerks and they are delegated small purchase, so say for under 5,000, they are trained. They are required to take the small purchase training, but that's the only class that they're required to take, aside from maybe procurement ethics, antitrust. So there's some core courses that they have to take in addition to their procurement, their method of procurement. So yes, they can be a clerk if they're delegated by their department head and have taken the small purchase training, they can do it.
And the department head is responsible then to assure that these staff are adequately trained for whatever level of authority they have?
Or maybe have her come.
Or does it come to you?
It's the department head.
Is the department head or the SPO responsible for assuring that they do actually have the required training to be able to do whatever level of procurement they're responsible for?
It's the department's responsibility to make sure that whoever's doing procurement have the adequate training. And they do sign off on the delegation form that these people are delegated and have the applicable training.
So if I may add, as Director of Accounting and General Services, what we probably want to do, Senators, is to add on the activity that each certified procurement specialist or individual delegated authority, basically it's how much volume are they doing, right? So they can certify and they can take a test, but if they only procure once a year or twice, a limited amount, they're going to forget. And so that's part of the challenge is not only the complexity of the procurement, but the number, the activity, the volume that they do. So we need to add on those extra components of data so that we can understand when to make them recertify and not just leave it to the state procurement office to catch them after the fact.
Is there any reporting then to the state procurement office, or it's just all at the department level so that there can be kind of an assessment that people are certified in levels or recertified in levels that they're doing the job they're supposed to be doing?
They're doing the job. How effective? I think that's what you're leading up to, why we have issues. And so that's something we need to work with SPO on, how to grade it. We don't grade our people who are procuring today. So something we should improve on as part of the process.
That would be helpful, and if the state procurement office can kind of oversee that to see where are the puka or what can we do better, I think that would help us in terms of how we proceed, whether Bonnie's, you're saying that at least the chief procurement officer in each department, or there's a unit that have been really certified more extensively with extensive knowledge, they can help make sure that it's consistent within the department.
And I did speak to Bonnie about that service, customer service like thing. She doesn't have a shop where other agencies can call if they're having difficulty or have questions, that there's a service arm that, like a call center, that can answer the questions up front. So again, there are ways that we can mediate, or I wouldn't say mitigate, preempt some of the issues after the fact.
Yeah.
Right, so we can problem solve for them up front. And that,
Yes,
I think that will be helpful.
We do have, in answer to Kurt, we do it we don't have a call center, but they do call us, and our purchasing specialists will, answer their questions. But there's not a dedicated call center. Our compliance people, our purchasing people who do this on a regular basis do respond to them through either calling or emails or Teams meetings or Zoom meetings. So we are able to reach out to them and they are able to reach out to us.
Yeah, I've heard that you have been really responsive, so thank you, Bonnie, on that
Thank
account.
you.
But, looking at how we might look at the whole system and improve that and build on it. So, members, any other questions? Okay, back to you, Comptroller, to move on.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you,
Okay, so
Thank you.
So that was from a statewide perspective. Now we would like to have our Public Works Administrator present what they do specifically in Public Works. And it's more than, as you know, DAGS does procure for projects on behalf of other state agencies. And so they have a lot more complexity to the variation of procurement, whether it be a small job or very large jobs. So they have a diverse set of procurement specialists that have to look at that. So I will turn that over to Chris Kiyomaka and the team in their conference room. So Chris?
Thank you, Kurt. Aloha, Chair Moriwaki and members of the special committee. I'm waving my hand, Chris Kiyomaka, I'm in the conference room. I'm joined by my branch chiefs in case you have questions. I have Gordon Wood from our Staff Services Office, Rando Hiraki from our Technical Services Office, Joseph Earing from our Planning Branch, Eric Nishimoto from Project Management Branch, Gordon Chen from Construction Management Branch, and last but not least, Thomas Backman from our Leasing Services Branch.
Excuse me, Chris, do you think that you could turn on your videos so that we can see you?
Me,
I don't know if your room accommodates that or not.
hang on.
Her video's on.
Are you, is your,
They're just in a large conference room.
Well, she's wondering if they have individual.
yeah, individual, like that?
Oh,
Yeah,
I
like
see, I
that.
see.
You'd rather just see me? That's
Yes.
not as nice as the conference.
Okay, so we can see you. Then you feel like you're in this room with us.
Oh, okay. Let me see now. I'm going to probably ask to share my screen then. Let's see. I can get this correctly. And all right, let's share. All right, can you see my screen?
We do.
Yay. Okay, great. I will go into presentation mode. All right, so thank you again very much for allowing us to share insights into our organization. And basically what we'll be giving you is the other side of the coin, which is the part of the team that actually has to implement the procurement rules and carry all of our projects through completion. Today, I'll try to quickly go over who we are and what we do, just because as background, we are somewhat different from other agencies that pretty much focus on their own core group. I will then hit your topics, the items in red, your procurement training information, procurement timelines, and we'll go a little bit into projects from cradle to grave because that includes our project timelines. We'll cover protests, our own internal challenges for Public Works Division, what we would look for as value-added focus and support to help us and other agencies like ourselves. And we also have some bonus material that we were asked to share that we've done more additional research in to share with you. We'll go through conclusions and questions and answers, but if you have questions along the way, then feel free to ask because we're going to cover a lot of material. So who are we? As Bonnie shared with you, we're one of the 17 divisions that are attached to or that are part of the Department of Accounting and General Services. We are the Public Works Division, the little blue box at the bottom. We report directly to the comptroller. But we also highlight our district offices because our Public Works services extend into each district office for the construction phase of projects. They also report directly to the comptroller.
What if your screens are moving, Chris?
Excuse me?
Oh, yes, your screen isn't moving. We have your title page only.
I think you still have the title page up.
See, is that other, okay, this is a problem with Zoom. I need to share a different version of my screen now. Let's try this one. All right.
But this one does.
Even go back to the non-presentation, not to take away the navigation of
Which, no, but it was moving for them. Stop share.
Chris, can you try doing a new share?
Yeah, I stopped the
So-
new share.
So continue like how you did earlier, and then do a new share, and it should show the full screen version.
This one? I have two screens. What are you seeing now?
The title page only.
Title page
You move
only?
down. Yeah.
If,
We see it on the side. Yeah, there, okay, it's moving.
okay, all right, I'll use this version then.
Yeah.
And are you,
Yeah.
you're only seeing,
Yep,
Wow.
it's moving when you do it on the side bar.
are you also seeing my sidebar or are you only seeing?
Yes.
We're seeing
Yeah,
both.
we're seeing a sidebar, both.
How do I, should I go to, should I try the slides? Sorry, all the technical people in my room.
Yes, yes.
I think if we just take away this view here, then this will get bigger.
Just move it.
I think
How do you do, can I just resume slideshow? No?
you can always try it. And then by moving the slide and see if
You just move it on the sidebar. We can see enough of the screen.
Yep,
And then we have
Yeah.
got our
Oh, you're okay then?
copies.
If I
Yeah,
do
yeah,
what I-
yeah. Mm-hmm.
manual, just do it manual.
Just go down.
Oh,
Oh,
there
there
we
we
go.
go. Okay, there. Oh,
All right.
good.
Here we are.
Yep.
Sorry. On the bottom left corner of the screen. And it's funny, my own TV screen doesn't show my own staff what I'm looking at, so sorry, guys. And the 3 district offices at the bottom that also report to the comptroller. And then within the Public Works Division, I have 2 service offices, Technical Services, who does our consultant selections. They put together our specifications and standards, oversee our warranties, and provide quality assurance and support for IT purposes. Our Staff Services offices take care of our fiduciary responsibilities, including our operating budget and channeling all of our fiscal issues through to ASO. They also contain our contracts branch, which right now consists of 1 person, and management services staff that oversee assistance for us in general and personnel issues as well. Below that, we have our 4 primary branches for planning, project management, which is design, construction management, which does the construction, and our leasing services branch. Within our staffing, we are authorized 96 people and broken out, as you can see here. Our AGS 221 is our Public Works Division. We're authorized 92 positions, of which 26 are vacant. 14 of them are unfunded at this time, so that we are actually operating under a vacancy rate of 28%. That's as of July 1st of this year. Our leasing services branch was manned by 4 positions, 3 of which are now vacant. None of them are unfunded. However, we're operating 75% deficit. So Tom is a man unto himself, but all of our engineers and our staff are working hard to support him because this leasing services branch is the only entity in all of the state that provides this service, which is to provide leased commercial space for offices for those agencies that need space outside the state office building. I've asked before how many of our staff are architects and engineers. We're authorized 40 positions, of which 30 are filled. So for working technical staff, we're at 25% vacancies. On top of that, we have our 7 branch chiefs and myself who are
A little bit better.
architects.
Can you come closer,
Closer,
maybe?
yeah.
Can you see?
Senator, I printed out a copy for you too, Senator Kim,
Okay.
in your packet.
No, this is much better. Yeah.
All right, so the banner we have here is really a sign of the times, and it's not unique to DAG. It's not even unique to just the state of Hawaii. This is what we're seeing in the industry nationwide, in that in our technical field, hiring was always cyclical. And so we are at the tail end of the baby boomers, and many of us are able to retire. So by the end of this year, we'll have an additional 12 staff who are eligible to retire. So we would be at a 43% vacancy rate if I don't keep them fat and happy to stay. You guys are laughing at me. That's true, though. That is compounded by the fact that we're having a very difficult time filling our vacancies. That's not just a shortage of kids coming out of college with engineering degrees, because they are, but it's really complicated. It's made more complicated by the fact that we hire people who have experience. Generally, our working level are licensed engineers. So that means you have at least 4 years working in engineering or architectural degrees to get a license, and then you become basic level working within our department. Many departments are like that because we are looking for the people who can just get on board and start the project.
Can I ask a question?
Just a minute, Chris. Senator Kim has a question.
So Chris, how many licensed engineers do you folks have?
We have currently 30 that are filled. If you count our branch chiefs and myself, that's 37 positions.
Okay.
We've authorized 10 additional more.
And what do they actually do, the licensed engineers?
They actually oversee our projects from cradle to grave in whatever branch they are in different phases.
So they're more like project managers?
Yes, yes,
So
they
why
are.
do we need licensed engineers to do project management?
Yeah, that's been the big debate lately, especially with the proposal to bring on non-licensed project managers. I've worked in organizations that have both licensed and unlicensed folks running projects. I do know that those with licenses are more capable to be able to understand and read the specifications, the plans. They're also more trained to respond to issues in the field, to understand the special technical requirements that come with all the projects that we do, especially in large CIP projects. It's not to say that there aren't very good project managers out there, but we found that there are few and far between, and they earn their merits through the School of Hard Knocks by actually doing the work.
Well, do you
It's
have
not-
a lot of engineers who are not project managers or are not really good at project managing? And then also, a number of the projects that have been in trouble have been overseen and managed by licensed engineers in government. And
A
so,
license in and of itself, and I'll get to this also similar to the procurement training, in and of itself, does not guarantee success.
right,
But when you're in the situation that we have now, where we have so few people and so much work, which we'll get into in a bit, it is hard to provide the kind of hands-on training and experience to build that knowledge base.
yeah, but we have to
Nope.
start somewhere, and the fact that we keep just trying to find licensed engineers without starting to, bring in and weave in all these others that could do the job, we're never gonna get there.
I agree with you, and I actually have a concept that I'll share with you at the end, an idea
Okay,
on how.
thank you.
Thanks.
Chair, I have a question to Senator Kidani.
Yes, please.
So, Chris, you guys have engineers, you have who are acting as your project managers, but you also hire consultants for all of your jobs. So,
Yeah.
are
Yes.
they not also engineers and project managers? I'm confused.
They're not project managers. They provide the technical expertise to actually do the work. So they will do the technical research, they do drawings, they do calculations. They don't actually run the project for us. That's what our project managers and our project coordinators do. And that's a skill that's not taught in school, at least not unless you're in project management school. But the consultants are the technical arm that do the heavy design, hands-on work that we're not capable to do because we just don't have the staffing to do that.
So your staff, your engineers go out and check the jobs as they are in progress?
That's what our construction management does. If they need additional technical support, then they'll tap our project management branch or our planning branch as needed.
Okay, so construction management are, I can't see the numbers you have because you have this.
Oh, let me go back up. Yes. So our construction management branch has 19 authorized positions. 3 of which are vacant, and my screen doesn't show there. And they're operating with a 16% vacancy rate at this time.
Okay, but they don't go out to check jobs because they don't have enough time.
They do go out to check jobs, but we cannot check them to the level that we might prefer because of the shortage of staffing and the complexity of some of our jobs.
Isn't that why you have consultants?
We do hire construction management consultants specific to that one phase when we need a lot more oversight. For example, a hospital project, right? Or corrections, something that's very specialized. Judiciary, particularly when we're talking about the districts as well. So we are hiring construction management consultant firms to supplement those projects.
I think it's
So
kind
I-
of confusing, Chris, if you can say what are the criteria that you use for consultants versus your own project managers, because we're seeing that there might be an overlap.
Yeah, so for our staff, we have the basic DHERD licensing requirements for all engineers and architects working in our project management type of positions or project coordinator types of positions. The qualifications for the consultants is more regulatory on their licensing and whether they have the background and skills within the type of project that we're selecting them for. So for example, not all architectural firms would be selected for a hospital project. Not all engineering firms would be selected for a structural engineering project. So that's where they get much more deep into their licensing and their hands-on experience. That's where the difference is.
So why does your staff need to be licensed if they don't approve the plan or stamp the plans with, that's what you have consultants and you hire all these other people for. Is that correct?
That's been an age-old debate across engineering and architectural fields in the state in general, whether you really need the license. When I first came to the state, my understanding was you needed the license because we're overseeing licensed professionals and that it would not be appropriate for an unlicensed person to oversee a licensed firm. Whether that's always true is debatable. That's just right now what the regs are within DHERD in the requirements. There are unlicensed folks that can do a fantastic job, but that would require a statewide change in hiring of architects and engineers.
Well, I think maybe this is where, we could use some advice from you guys instead of hiring all these people. And we still end up with hundreds and hundreds of change orders. It doesn't make sense to me. If all of these professionals, have to be licensed, and then why do we still have all these change orders that cost us millions and millions of dollars? I was looking at a chart that was on, page 40 or something like that talked about your projects and the change orders and, all that. And I thought it was pretty appalling that on your, I think it was construction, we had like 630 change orders out of 85 jobs or something. Is that correct?
Yes. Would you like to work through the presentation to get to that point
Sure,
and discuss that?
sure.
Okay.
Before you move on, can I ask a question? What's the difference between the project management branch and the construction management branch?
Project management branch is like design. So they oversee the work that leaves planning branch generally and puts together all of the elements that would go into the bid documents. So the design, plans and the specifications, all of those metrics are put together in project management branch to put out to bid. Then when it is bid through our staff services offices, we work through the process for procurement, go through award, and then that's when it moves into construction management branch specifically to oversee the construction.
Okay, so you have somebody, licensed engineer that is overseeing the project management side of it, and then when it gets to the actual construction, you have a different person, a different engineer now oversees that side of it?
Yes, that's correct.
Why wouldn't you have the same person review the whole thing?
You'll enjoy the rest of our presentation. We get into that.
Okay, because, you know, you have somebody designing it, now you bring in somebody else who didn't design it or watch the designing, having to oversee it. To me, it doesn't make any sense for that. You want somebody that was there in the beginning to see it all the way through the end, including
And
the
that's a perfect
instructions.
segue into our presentation. Thank you.
Okay, one last question. In the past, years and years and years ago, these licensed engineers used to do all the specifications?
Not always, no. In fact, years and years ago, 3 decades ago when I came to DAGS, which is years and years ago now, we had a design branch. But that was nestled in amongst this organization as you see it now. And that design branch did do in-house designs, but they only did small in-house designs, predominantly for the Department of Education. So they did like sidewalk repairs, replace doors, replace windows. They would never have designed an entire renovation of a building or a school.
Okay,
So, you know,
so we always
and-
used consultants from
Yes,
the Ice Age.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think I'm that old, but yeah. Thank you.
So Chris, something to think about as you look at the vacancies and the difficulty in recruitment is looking at how we talk about cradle to grave, having a person, as Senator Kim is suggesting, if you have a licensed engineer and they help or they develop the scope of work and they know what is in the
Right.
design to be built, why
Right.
not have that person follow the project all the way to the end of the project to execution so that you know that what was conceived in the beginning is what you get at the end.
Right.
And, you know, and if you can look at that as a process of what we're talking about, cradle to grave, not separate branches doing separate with different people, especially when you're looking at vacancies upcoming.
Yes.
You know, take a look at that, please.
I'll share with you that I've worked in both organizations. In my life prior to DAGS, I spent 9 years at the Hawai'i Housing Authority, and they do cradle to grave. So does DOT Airports and some other agencies. But you're going to make me regret that I shortened my presentation because we addressed that directly. There's a big difference between what they do and what we do, and we're going to dig into that real soon if it pleases you.
Okay, why don't you proceed? Thank you.
Thank you. So the big question is, what do we do? And we can say that 2 ways, like, what do we do? Or what do we do? So let's do the what do we do first. You know, we're a centralized procurement entity for capital improvement program projects. And by centralized, we're saying that we are the go-to entity for the state agencies, both executive and judiciary branch, to procure their capital improvement projects. Therein lies the bugaboo, and we'll just try to plant that seed so that you'll remember that for our future discussion. But we do provide everything from soup to nuts. We start with nothing, and really we can create project, get land acquisition, planning, design, construction, you know, and all the way through warranty. And we also include the special bonus of our leasing services branch. We support the mission of the department by directing the expenditure of capital improvement funds, both CIP funds and operating funds for CIP projects. And we represent the comptroller when he sees fit for us to do so. We do go through procurement training, and we work very closely with SPO. We comply with all the requirements from SPO for training, as well as our own DAGS internal requirements. We are trained in Chapter 103D primarily because that's the bulk of the type of procurement we do. We do competitive sealed bids, competitive bid proposals, professional services, some small purchase, a little more sole source, and emergency procurement. On rare occasion, we've used Hawai'i Pro, but truthfully, we don't because our projects are a little more complex. We do them more in-house. We are now, because of our P3 adventures, we are getting into finance agreements through Chapter 37D and lease agreements for real estate development. To ensure that we meet our 103D requirements, we also use a spreadsheet for every single person in our division. Right now, I have this table that shows all of the positions by title, and the yellow boxes show what the mandatory requirements are for training for any individual position. So for example, a building construction inspector 2 must be trained in competitive skill bids, competitive skill proposals, professional services, and small purchase agreements. We also have recommended courses that we encourage our staff to take, and those are boxes in blue. The X's in the boxes designate for any one position which classes they've already taken and that they have received the procurement delegation to be authorized to implement. The asterisks are areas where our staff have taken the class but have not been authorized by delegation. So they won't actually implement it, but they do have the knowledge and the training. So this is what we maintain for all of our positions. In addition to the Procurement Training Act 241 back in 2016, mandated DAGs to do annual training for all engineering personnel of executive departments and state agencies, in essence to share best practices for CIP projects, which we did implement in 2017. We gathered all of the executive branch procurement agencies and discussed what our needs were, how we move forward on procurement, so we could get a good idea of what all of the agencies were doing, and then tried to provide training to fill the pukas or the voids that existed between the different departments. We hosted that training in the state capitol's auditorium in December of 2017, and we videotaped that as well. All of that information is online and available on our website for everyone to use. All departments have been advised that they are mandated to have their engineers, and we say engineers and architects, to be trained to go through the videos and to go through all of the handouts. It is their own requirement to make sure they comply with this. We, like even more so than the State Procurement Office, do not have the capacity for specifically training and certifying, but we do provide the service. And when agencies call us, we do provide the guidance that we can to the best of our ability.
Do you certify or have anything that we asked Bonnie about on the other side of the house on procurement? Certify or I guess it's up to each department, but you know, especially on construction contracts that are so large.
No, we don't certify anyone in and of ourselves. We, as you know, we require the licensing for our staff, but nothing where we would certify anyone else.
There's no process for certification.
Yeah, we're just saying there's no process for certification and no really metrics for certification within our department or our division, much less for the whole state.
So I'm just wondering, Act 241, that requires mandatory annual training, like who so oversees that to ensure that they are getting trained and they are being, I guess that they know what they're doing.
Each department and agency is held responsible for that, because we don't have the capacity to have people log on and verify that they've been trained. So that has to be within the department. Is there a question?
No, thank you.
All right. So when we get into procurement timelines, that's one of your requests, we do want to get into how we manage projects from cradle to grave, because that's the heart of our mission. And so even for our own staff, we have these types of flow charts or aids that we provide so that staff can understand really what processes are involved. And when you look at our flow chart, this is a very simple one in the sense that it shows all of the planning steps. And from here, you have a project development report that says from scratch, how do you define what your project is doing? You go through and say, is it a major impact project? Do you go through an environmental impact statement or environmental assessment? And basically walks you through all of the due diligence components. Oh, I'm changing my slide of the project. And so all of the planning phases are highlighted in yellow. The blue section is our design component, where you take all of the planning parameters and basically provide the documents that we need to go out to procurement. And then the green is the construction. What we wanted to show here is that in the whole realm of a project from cradle to grave, planning can take the longest time and tremendous expense. You can talk about planning from 1 week for a very small project up to decades for larger developments or larger projects. Think about your correctional facilities or in what we're doing for developing a district. That can take decades to go through. Design also depends on the size of the project. It can be very quick, within a month, or it could take several years depending on the complexity. Construction depends again on the complexity also. But what we're trying to highlight here is the area that we're focusing on, the procurement, the bid, the award, and the protest, is really just this one box along this one seam between design and construction in the entire construction implementation process. There's a lot of other areas that need to be fine-tuned and assisted with, a lot more areas that are losing money than just in this box area.
So,
Would you want-
so Senator Kim,
But don't you
Yeah.
have more control over all the other boxes than you do with the protests?
Control is a misnomer. When you think about planning a project and you put out an EIS, we cannot control what the response will be. We can't control what we're going to find when we dig up dirt, right? We don't really know when we start a project what we're going to find.
No,
And
I
so-
understand that, but I'm just saying that because you folks are the ones in charge of putting out the bid and doing all of this other stuff, you have a lot more control over that than you have of a protest, because a protest is based on somebody else dictating it. But then once the protests come in, then again, you guys are in charge though, right?
Yep. Well, we're in charge in how we process it.
Yeah, so when it takes 6 months to determine whether or not a protest is going to be upheld or not, a lot of that time is because of the department.
Yes,
Or-
but we'll show you our metrics in a later slide. It's not that bad.
So, Chris, while we say that we're interested in procurement because that's where the bid protest, we actually see problems arising from when you do the scope of work and you contract, or you go out to bid, or you go out to contract. But we also are interested in this cradle to grave, which is once you get that award, how do you make sure that the award is monitored so we get the performance we wanted in the first place? So if there are challenges that you have on executing so that we have proper performance, we also want to know what are the challenges there, because we're looking at improving the whole contracting process and policies so that we get what we pay for. So,
Thank you.
you know.
Yeah, thank you.
So Chris, when you say, this is Senator Kidani, when you say cradle to grave, is the same team handling the project cradle to grave, or is it being handed off, and that's why all these changes happen?
As a team, yes, it's the same team from cradle to grave, and that's what we want to show. It's not one individual, but it is the same team. And that's the critical differential. So thank you for asking that, and we'll be showing you that in a bit.
Okay.
Yeah. So when we talk about process timeline, we do share our table B1A, which is our guide on basically it gives you good timelines for each phase of our projects and based on the value of construction. And so our staff uses this as a tool, and this is what we try to encourage our own staff to use when they're trying to estimate schedules for projects. And we go through each of the phases, and we even include, the building permitting process, and the yellow boxes are the bid, award, and contracting phase, which, as you see, from a small project to a large project, doesn't vary too much, roughly a month and a half to 2 months for that phase. When we issue notice to proceed depends on how long it takes us to get a building permit, and also on the complexity of the job, whether it has long lead order items and whether the user's even ready to start construction. But this is a great tool that we use to help staff understand how projects move forward. And even some of the parallel processes off on the right-hand side show how we start to overlap different parameters of the project just to keep them moving. For example, we might start design, even as you're going through the environmental impact statement, we start preliminary permitting review to make sure we can keep projects moving. But this is just a good tool to look at timeline-wise.
Can I ask a question? So
Yeah.
does every department follow this kinds of matrix that you have?
I'm sure they have their own guidelines. I saw DOTs because they have their own process and they have to embed, like the federal transportation requirements. HPHA would have to incorporate HUD requirements. But this is the same general flow, so they should be similar. I would think within
So
of what we're doing.
who is responsible to look at across the board of whether or not you have the basic templates and then it's just being other parts, the nuances to each department are put in? Who oversees that? Is that you, Bonnie?
No. There's no entity right now that does that. And honestly, it would be really tough to have one entity do that for all of the departments because they are so diverse.
No,
and
I'm
they
not
have
saying you have an entity to do it for the departments. I'm saying you have somebody there to making sure that everybody's following the similar process. And that if you have this kind of timeline that is being shared and that everybody in the state following similar process so that we don't have, 15 different processes other than those that are more specific. But the basic parts of it should all be the same. And they should have similar flow charts, similar things, so that it's consistent throughout.
No, I totally hear what you're saying, and I think that's what Act 241 was trying to do. And that's why we put up all of these template guidelines and requirements for our work. That's what's in our training, and we provided, our own guideline tools and our own forms. And that's what we were, we appreciated that other departments were thankful for that. And that's the kind of inquiries we get, hey, how do you do this? We'll help them if we can, if we have it, and we help to connect different agencies to work their staff through. But yeah, I believe that's what Act 241 was trying to achieve, but there is still no one entity that does that.
Well, I mean, I don't know if we need an act to get us to do this, but shouldn't that be then procurement? The job of the responsibility of procurement office to oversee that every department has similar types of process and delivery process timelines?
That's not really procurement, Senator. That, we have processes for the procurement process itself, not for the total project, as Chris alludes to.
Okay. But we need somebody to do that.
Yeah. And that's what we're saying, we're the flip side of the coin. We really can't overlap on those types of duties. I couldn't imagine SPO doing this. It's tough.
So whether it's Public Works Division or not, I think what Senator Kim is asking is there's a template here that you have, and it's really should be shared with other departments so that we can have consistency. This is like the past performance or the performance evaluation that we're talking about. Consistency across departments make for better projects, make for a fair and consistent application of the law. So if you're giving training out, like you said, you are giving training, this should be part of the training so that every department knows what is a template they can follow. If they have other customized laws, like transportation or other departments, that can be customized, but at least this is the template you should follow in a way that's consistent across the state.
It's actually in our training, our Act 241 training, and it's handouts that we provided to everybody, so you can download them off of our website. So if they go through the training, they'll see this, and then they can use the forms.
Yeah, but somebody has to assure that they're doing it.
I know, I agree, but there is no entity that does that.
So
Except-
going back to Bonnie then, I know that that state procurement office should be overseeing all procurement, and perhaps the staffing wasn't there to do the public works construction oversight, but perhaps that is one way of combining what you have put together in Public Works Division so that it's available statewide. And Bonnie, someone in your office, maybe we should look at staffing of your office to include that kind of expertise so that we do have consistency. And somebody is monitoring the departments, or at least helping the departments on construction projects. 'Cause that's where the big money is being lost, or, projects not on time. So maybe that is something to look at as we go forward.
One of the concepts we're working with, and I was talking to, with the comptroller as well, on how we could get better and possibly implement assistance in other departments, is to have like an A team. And similar to what Bonnie's saying, where each department has a procurement specialist core, is having like a project management core that can go around and visit departments and see what they're doing and assist them to improve their processes or fill voids or coordinate projects. DOT had something like that at one time, their own A team that would just look over the shoulder of people implementing projects, and projects that were in trouble, they jump in, they try to solve problems and train and walk them through. So that may be helpful. It's just that it doesn't exist, and I don't necessarily think it belongs in SPO, because they don't actually, do the construction the way the rest of us do, but perhaps some other type of entity. Kurt, I don't know if you want to jump in on that as well, but a troubleshooting team that can go and visit departments and assist.
Yeah, Senator Kim, that's exactly right. What is needed is a different entity, and maybe not even in Public Works per se, but an independent group that looks at the projects that are in trouble or just moving along slowly, and to be troubleshooting and to actually provide relief and support. On a very small basis, what Audrey is doing for us right now on the island of Maui, because we're shorthanded, is she physically goes there once a week or whenever she can, and she looks at some of the troubled projects or projects that have not closed, and she's looking at paperwork, but she's catching a lot of things, and that provides a couple of things. One, relief to the staff so they can focus on things. It provides confidence that somebody else besides the staff is making hard decisions and looking at things. The third is sending a message to the island of Maui contractors that somebody is looking and calling it out. And so having someone just independent with different pair of eyes, sometimes, as you know, is more effective than having someone in the knee deep in a project, because they have a different perspective. So I absolutely would like to explore establishing that kind of a roving team, so to speak, that has that independence.
I certainly agree with that, but I think that it should happen sooner in the whole process, is what I'm trying to get at, where our foundation of all of this, each entity, each agency is doing their own timeline, their own little charts. You have DOT doing it, you have you doing it, and to me, we need somebody to make it more efficient, so everybody's following the same things and everybody's not recreating the wheel for their department on the basic vision of these projects, from cradle to grave. Let me share a story with you about the bathroom that we wanted to put in the Senate President office. Okay, this is about 2013. And so the Senate President's office is on the 4th floor, and they don't have a bathroom or water. It didn't have water at all. Right below is the house finance, I believe, that have a kitchen. They have water. I think they might even have a bathroom. And then the men's bathroom is right across the way. So we wanted to put in a thing, went to DAGS, Sam Kalejo went to DAGS, and they came back with a price of about over $100,000 to put in this bathroom, which I couldn't understand. And they said they'd have to hire a consultant. Hire a consultant for something that small, which is going to add to the cost. And I said, we can't get the taxpayers to pay that kind of money. So I said, okay, what if we just put a sink in there? Okay, and that came up to about $80,000 just to put a sink. And I know the schools, every time the classrooms wants a sink, they got to pay $20,000, $30,000 for a sink. Okay, so then Sam looked at it, And they found a way to pump it in to the conference room, and we ended up paying about $5,000. But we ended up doing it, you know. So it just bothers me that that's the kind of price tags we're getting for these jobs. And I don't know why our engineers, our licensed engineers, can't do a simple job like a bathroom that's right here in the Capitol, when there's water running. We're not in the middle of, you know, the desert or someplace. I mean, it's crazy.
I understand, Senator, and I agree with you. In fact, we had a similar situation on the island of Kauai with a state office building where a consultant was brought in to put in a wall, and it was expensive. But when asked a very simple task like that, and I'm not saying it's water and electrical, just a wall basically and moving some lines, it came up to $27,000 instead of $20,000. So you're right, Senator. We got to look at the jobs and decide when we can do it in-house and when there's less risk. But there's also compliance with electrical, and there is plumbing, as you know. Plumbing, we need experts to make sure we're running the pipes correctly. But I don't disagree with you. I think it's on a case-by-case basis that we look at smaller jobs and do it in-house. That's my personal opinion.
So, but when do we do that? Do we need a law to do that?
No, I think it's common sense, Senator.
Yes.
But
so-
it takes us to take a look at it. It's a decision. It's a business decision when to take the risk to do something in-house by our licensed individuals. And I think
Okay,
you're right. on
so whose decision is it? Is it your decision?
Well, ultimately, my decision, yes. So I talked to the district manager and we looked at all the different options, and there were really two. We actually got the consultant and contractor down even further, but that was still too much. So it takes each job and taking a look at it and just making a decision and working it out with and permitting and things like that.
Okay, I just think that we need to do that sooner. Like you said, it's common sense. I've also seen a number of jobs that DAGs have designed, put everything together, and the project actually didn't get done. There was a fencing project on one of the neighbor islands, and we spent, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that project never went. For one fencing, it was crazy.
I don't know that
Is
particular
that
project. Yeah, but-
Kilani?
yeah.
Do you remember
We've
what?
had,
Just one more thing to think about based on what Senator Kim is saying, is if we're looking for recommendations on how we can improve not just procurement, but contracting, so that we actually do a very more efficient, more effective contracting out for services and projects that can really serve the public and our dollar go further. So if there is some way that you can look at assessment up front, you know, you scope the work. If it's a minimal project, as you say, that you've done on the neighbor islands where, you know, it's moving a wall and you don't need a big consultant to contract to say, okay, this is where you move the wall. Things like that DAGS is in a pretty good position to be able to assess, and maybe some questions or template that you can put together that we'd like to see on decisions on when to contract for consultants or for, you know, what you actually go out to construction on. So I think, again, it's in this template that you have here to share with other departments and then streamline it, would be really helpful, is that in that scoping part of it, that you look at what is the job, and each department be trained to look at the job and not just go through just following blindly, I guess. This is the procedure, step 1, 2, 3, 4, but make some decisions on the front end that could save the state money but get a better job faster and serve our public. So
We'll look at that.
Yeah,
And the only caveat I would say, Senator, is on the island of Kauai, it's small. And so Eric, again, controls all of his resources. On Oahu, it'll be a little more challenging because they got defunded a lot of positions, as well as Kauai. But it's more of a resourcing issue as well as skill. But I know that on certain projects they could do it. It's just a matter of balancing the work orders and things that they're doing in central services versus a bigger job like that.
especially if you're going to have staff that have engineering and architectural expertise, that kind of assessment can be something you help the departments with if they don't have somebody on staff. But again, it's all with the same goal of how do we get the projects done faster and more cost effectively, and not just this is the process and follow it, blindly.
That is always our underlying goal all the time. And that's a spiral, that's a learning curve, and that's training. We do have something we call the salmon ladder at the end of our presentation that explores other things that cause wastage of funding for projects as well, if you're looking at the entire process. If we can move to that, I'd love to get to some of the juicier information. So what we have is on our walls, we have flow charts such as these, really just basically to show the entire process. And this is yours, Eric. But really looking at everything from planning and design. Here's a bid phase in the center, through construction and post-construction. Again, just showing that there are a lot of complex steps that our staff has to learn and oversee. This also was included in our training for guidelines. But we start getting into the topic of protests then, that one section. We do follow SPO's process for receiving and processing protests. That should be cookie cutter pretty much for all of the departments. What we are seeing is a shift from just contractors submitting protests now to what really is direct communication with their legal counsel. So when you look at the inner steps where we say that our contracts engineer analyzes and researches claimed basis or basis of protest, and as necessary asks for more information from the protester, and we go back and forth many times on that because now they're coming in with protests giving cases in law or case law precedents, prior history, and bigger legal matters. It means we invariably invoke assistance from our deputy AGs on almost every single protest. That in and of itself is time consuming, and it requires us to cross every T and dot every I on all communications throughout the protest process. When we finally get through all of those processes, and that goes back and forth, we go through our own internal review from the branch chief, through the administrator, myself, the deputy comptroller, and the comptroller for signature. And then, as SPO was saying, if it's denied and there's no timely receipt of protesters' request for administrative hearing, then we resume the project. Keep in mind, whenever there's a protest, from the moment we're officially in receipt of the protest, all action to move the project forward freezes. That's even action to evaluate other bidders for qualification to bid. So when we talk about project delays and costs, a lot of it is invested in the protest process. We have researched our own basis of protest for the last 8 years, from FY14 through FY21. We received 47 protests in that time frame, 44 of which were received prior to award. 28 were based on complaints about subcontractor listing. Of the 28, we denied 18 protests, sustained 9, and worked with one of the complainants to resolve that protest. We had 1 protest for specifications and scope of work, 1 for the actual protest procurement process itself, which we denied, 2 that were involved in non-compliance with solicitation requirements. 1 was denied, 1 was sustained. And then we have the other 12, which covered a realm of areas. 3 were for bid bond discrepancy, 3 were for the apprenticeship preference, 2 were for licensing discrepancies, 3 were for the requirement to self-perform work, and 1 was for the general basis of rejection. So we don't have a lot of protests, but they are extremely time-consuming. We had 3 protests that came in post-award. 1 was an alleged unlicensed subcontractor we denied. The other was an alleged fraudulent subcontractor credentials, which was also denied. And 1 was improper post-award bid rejection, again, which was denied. What we've done is put this together in a graph that I think is pretty cool, that puts all of this information together. from 2014 to 2021. The blue column is the total number of projects that were bid in any one year. Next to that, the orange column, the little block, are the number of protests filed. The yellow, the gray box next to it is the average value in millions of dollars of the protest. Then the yellow box is the average days to resolve the protest. So as you can see, we're not talking 6 months for ours. We're talking 2 months to 3 months for most of our protests. I'd like to highlight, you can see that our project issuance follows the lapsing fund years. So even numbered years when we're pounding out all of our projects to meet the deadlines, that in turn though does not seem to affect the number of protests we receive. And in fiscal year 20, there is this huge gray bar which showed the value of protests at roughly $35 million. That is because the projects that we're protesting on were large value projects. I think 2 projects were.
Yeah, we had WCCC, New Housing Project, and then the Oahu Veterans Home Project was in there as well.
So when we have large projects and the value of the protest is large, but the number of protests did not vary that much. Another interesting graph is that we actually plotted the protests themselves by each fiscal year, and you can see how long it took us to resolve the protests. So with the new law in place, if we were to implement the 75-day cutoff for the first review, out of 47 protests, 19 would still be unresolved if we look just back in time. So that's roughly 40% of our projects not being resolved within the 75 days. If we then apply for and receive a 30-day extension, we reduce that outstanding amount to just 9 protests unresolved. That's about 19%. What we are saying, though, is again, looking at our overall protest process, we really only, the longest time we had was 93 days, and that's just 3 months. The problem we have with the cutoff days at 75 days, and from there it would then go to a higher level for review, is recognizing that with the complexity of protests now, and our people being boots on the ground, really integral to the project, would be the most familiar with the details and the issues involved in the contract and the protest. If that project now then is removed from any agency and then goes to a higher level like DCCA, while they might review the protest in 45 days, keep in mind it's because all of the information is being handed to them, but also we are concerned that the decision may not be as fair because they don't get into the weeds and they don't understand the nuances of that protest and how it affects other protests that come in as well. So that is where we are really concerned with this type of time frame being imposed. I believe all of our contracting procurement firms are doing their best to resolve protests as quickly as possible because nobody wins when protests are dragged out. The longer it takes to resolve a protest, the longer a project sits, the cost goes up, delays go up, and you end up sometimes not even completing the project. So
let me just ask a question, because if I look at your protests, so 28 of your 44 are on subcontractor list. Do you look at the types of protests that you get, so that you look at, okay, maybe this is a problem, and look at some systemic changes that could be made so that we learn from the protests, so that it's not just, okay, we don't like people protesting, but looking at the protest as maybe there's something in the procedures or something in the policy that we need to look at to clarify subcontractors' definition, for example, if these are a big problem. And do you do that, and where does that information go when you find it?
Yes, we do that, and it's placed in our testimony when we come to legislature.
But
So
do you not, share that with other departments who have similar kinds of contract challenges? So
do.
that there is, we operate as one state, not separate departments being separate entities unto themselves. So this is what we're looking at. How do we learn from each other? And if
Yes.
you find these kinds of problems, those should be identified and we can do something about it. We should.
Yeah, we do. Our contracts person is very close to all of the other procurement officers in the state, particularly DOE and DOT, because they have a preponderance of projects. And we find they have the same issues that we do. We do share tips and ideas on how to resolve the issues. We also share information so that we can bring them to you to provide suggestions on how we can improve the system as well. So that is actively happening, and I think we'd be happy to probably gather them as well to meet with you if you want to discuss
Sure.
those.
I mean, I think we're all in the same boat. We want to make our procurement process faster and more efficient, but also fair and standardized. So yes, that is
And I
important.
believe that, you know, when things such as preferences and such come out, the intent is there, but we can give insights on whether that process meets the intent
Thank you.
and maybe other ways to meet that. So, yeah, terrific. We'd love to do that.
Thank you. Senator Kim.
Yeah, Chris, going back to your discussion regarding the 75 days and the time that it takes to resolve this. I hear what you say as far as quality review, but I also know that people tend to, a lot of times, and this is the criticism we all have working in government, that, you know, we take our time. We don't do things timely. And that when I questioned the AG regarding a protest that they had gotten 4 months beforehand and asked them where it was, they really wasn't aware. And after we brought it up, they brought it out in a week. So there are times when these reviews or whatever it is, that people put them on the back burner. And if there is a timeline, then people tend to work within it. Like DCCA, they have 45 days. They got to do it within a certain period of time. We have to approve the judges within 30 days. You know, so those all have deadlines which we find ourselves being able to meet. It doesn't mean that we don't have enough time to review. It just means that we have to prioritize. And I think that's the problem we've had with a lot of these cases, is that there's no urgency to get it done because it's not their money being paid for all the delays.
I can't speak for all of the departments, but I can speak for our team. Our one contracts engineer busts Okole all the time.
Well, I'm not saying they're not, but like you said, it involves the AG, it involves different things.
Yeah.
And, you know, if in fact the people in charge had to be penalized and pay something for each delay, I bet you things aren't going to take that long, right?
You know what the flip side is, though? When one of the things that was coming out in this past session, we started looking at the different versions of the bill, and there was one version that said, if the departments don't resolve the protest within the time, then the protest will be sustained.
Oh yeah, we weren't for that. One of the House members put that in because they wanted some teeth in it. But that was never the intent of that measure.
But you know what happens is, what we see are the contractors come in, and instead of having a single protest, now they're throwing the entire book at us, whether it's frivolous or not, and we have to pick through every single one. And then as a protest is going through, they'll counter-protest each other, and it bounces back and forth, and we get bound by that. And now we say, well, you didn't meet the 75 days, it'll go DCCA. They have a better chance of their protest being sustained. And so it's a double-edged sword, and they play the game well. So a lot of our procurement staff, we talk to the other departments, they are struggling. And I don't want to throw the AGs under the bus, because I know our AGs are working like crazy to support us as well. But
6 months to resolve a protest. I mean, I don't know anybody who agrees with that.
we don't either, and hopefully that'll be like.
That's why we needed a cutoff. We needed some time to get that done. I have another question. You say pre-award and post-award. Pre-award
Yes.
is what part of the, timeline?
After the bid opening, but before you determine who the selected bidder is.
Okay, so
Yeah.
if there's a concern with the way the bid is written or the different requirements, statistical requirements required in the bid, if there's a problem, is that considered a bid protest?
No, not necessarily. We have a process when projects are put out and advertised that the contractors can come in for requests for clarification. That's the time for them to say, I need more information or there's something wrong with the bid. But that's not really a protest item per se.
Okay, and to do that, how much time does one have, a contractor has to ask those questions?
30 days.
I'm sorry?
So anytime before the bid opening, and typically we allow 14 days before bid opening.
And then gives us time to prepare the.
Yeah, okay. So normally when we advertise a bid, we try to put a 30-day window before bid opening. We have a deadline where they have to come in at least 2 weeks before bid opening, because that gives us time to try to resolve the issue before the bids are received. So roughly 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So is it possible that some departments are saying you have 7 days only?
That wouldn't be cool. We don't do that. I don't think,
We don't have knowledge of that. No.
yeah, we don't have knowledge of doing that.
Because that's been brought to my attention, that they're using the same 7 days to protest a bid for discrepancies with the specifications. See, the problem
That's
with the specifications is that if it's not written correctly, we're gonna end up with all these change orders, which is what is happening.
Yeah, agreed. But we give more time in our bid process.
Because you give it to a consultant, and then if it gets messed up, then who, does a consultant have to then, I mean, what's the ramifications? If they
What do you
write
mean?
wrong specifications, if the consultant puts out stuff that, that you end up finding out from the contractors, they can't find this material, you can't do this, or something like that.
There are different levels of remedy. There are, if it's something they honestly didn't know, we can work on resolving those issues. But it goes from that all the way to errors and omissions, design errors, gross errors, negligence.
Have you guys ever did that?
We have on rare occasion.
Because, when they built the UH baseball field and the whatever, I mean, talk about errors, and then it didn't even get caught until after it was built. I mean, that's so embarrassing, those kinds of stuff that goes on. I don't know who oversaw that from cradle to grave.
The consultant was assessed for that.
Yeah, I know, but, okay, assess how much? Because when you look at what had to be done and all the delays and everything, it's crazy. And I'm sure that consultant or the whoever did it, got other jobs in the future. I mean, it's like, there's no teeth.
Not with us. Oh, they did not with us.
Well, not with you guys, but I'm sure they did.
This is why we want the past performance,
Yeah.
so everybody can see if that
Actually,
contractor or
You know what?
consultant-
There are methods for construction especially though, where you can, in essence, blackball non-performing contractors. State just as a habit doesn't do it. City does. You don't have to change any rules or any laws. You can do it right now, but nobody does.
Why?
Nobody has a stomach to. We've suggested it. It just has not happened.
Perhaps that's what we should be doing is, again, you have all of this problem because you're not enforcing what we already have in place. So more laws is not going to help if you're not enforcing it. So I think we'd like to see you folks come up with a proposal on how you're going to enforce the current law. And, perhaps SBO has to send out another circular to all the departments. Because this is the whole idea of the past performance evaluation, is after each contract or even during the contract period to be evaluating the performance of contractors, so we don't use the lemons over and over again because one department knows about it, but nobody else does, so another department picks up
I think
a
that-
poor-performing contractor.
That was the crux of our testimony this past session, is that we have the capacity to do all of this. We don't need new laws and new rules.
Well, then why aren't we doing it?
I don't know, but that
Well,
was,
I think,
that's.
Mr. Comptroller, I think we should be looking at enforcing the laws we have on our books rather than us putting in new laws. If you
Chair,
can
I
look
have
at that.
questions, please.
Yes, please, Senator Kidani.
Thank you, Chair. So Chris, I don't know why you guys don't do that, because it seems that it falls in your shop. I'm at this chart of the change orders, and it seems that you almost expect change orders for all the contracts that you're doing. As you note there, that most are anticipated from the time of contract execution. And yet there are still 630 change orders, in just the construction phase. I just don't understand this, because if they are, the consultants are doing the change orders, then why aren't you back charging them or fining them for whatever, or blackballing them for not doing the job that you're paying them to do, and they made the change orders?
I think we really need to go through the progression of what we want to share on how we move forward on our projects to add more depth. Because a lot of your questions are at the surface level. We need to get below that to really dig into what's happening, if you don't mind. We're going to hit that. We're going to get into the change orders.
Well, you keep saying that, Chris, but I don't see any changes coming forward. All I'm saying is that we are all concerned about the monies that we pay out, the state of Hawaii, and I don't know how long you've been in this position, but surely you can see that it's not working. So how do we change it? That should come from you. You should be giving us some ideas of what we do. And if you say no laws are needed, then you have a handle on what should be done to make it better.
I'm trying to get there, sir. Oh, ma'am. Sorry.
So one more thing, Chris, before we leave bid protest, you have this process of receiving the letter, the contracts engineer goes back and forth with the AG, goes back and forth with various iterations, but is that contracts engineer, we're talking cradle to grave, so all the people from cradle to grave that will be involved in this, because surely if the contract engineer is the person who developed the scope of work, when the bid protest comes in, they can see whether this was in the specs or not. And it seems, why is it going back and forth with the AGs? And what is your process on how you deal with that, so that the AG is there with a contract engineer and everybody else that's involved, so that you can do this more quickly than this back and forth in somebody's desk, which really takes a lot of time. So what is your process exactly?
Our process exactly is what we have in this slide. We go back to the contracts engineer, because protests are more than just what's in the plans and specs. Contracts engineering specializes in the contract language itself. That is a specialty. You need to understand all of the rules and all of the codes that go into contract management, contract enforcement. And that gets into your licensing, that goes into your qualifications, that goes into your bond, insurance, and all kinds of legal issues that the rest of our team doesn't need to specialize in.
So that's not my question. My question is, so you get this protest letter, and it's a petition of all of the issues in why they're protesting. Now, who looks at that? Is it just a contract engineer and they put together whatever the specs are, and then it's sent to the AG's office, and the AG's office looks at it, comes back? Is it a back and forth, or is it a team, as you say you have in your cradle to grave approach? Is it a group comes together and says, here's all the issues. Okay, contract engineer, look into that. Okay, AG, look into that, and work together as a project management effort, rather than sitting on the AG's desk for a couple of months or 2 weeks or whatever it is, and coming back and forth and back and forth. That's where time lapses are. How do you actually operate?
The, we actually operate per this slide. The contracts engineer specializes in the contract language in areas that are protestable. They first determine if the protester has standing. Is their protest a valid protest? If it is, what is the basis of the protest? From that basis, they will tap whatever resource they need to address that. More often than not, it's not in the plans and specs. It's in the preferences. It's in, the type of subcontractor list that they have. And that's not in the plans and specs generally. That's in the actual general conditions and special conditions of the project.
I realize there's all kinds of specialties involved, but do you at the front end, as soon as this protest letter comes in, to call the AG who's going to be responsible for this protest, the contract engineer, the specialist you're talking about, are they all in one meeting at the start of this when they get the letter? Or are you doing some assessment and then sending it to the AG's office? I mean, how is that process? So we cut down time moving back and forth and everybody's there in the same room.
Our contracts engineer does the first review because it would be a waste of time to have everyone sitting in the room. The minute they receive the protest, the evaluation starts. They're looking at, like I said, is there a basis? What is the basis? What are the issues? What is specific to this contract? That's compiled so that it can facilitate the AG's specific review of the issues. Then they put their heads together and meet to discuss those issues and how do they address them? What are the impacts and what are the steps forward? So that type of teamwork absolutely is happening. But it's not where you gather everybody in the room because that's just not effective. The back and forth now is when there is not enough information in the protest to make a determination. And then you end up chasing the contractor for that information and they have to respond. That's the back and forth. So our relationship with our AGs is effective and efficient. We all have to work within our priorities and schedules.
Okay,
But we do have this list.
Thank you. Senator Kim has a question.
Yeah, so Chris, I understand, and there are going to be protests and challenges that are very complex. But there are a lot of them that aren't complex. And I'll give you again, unless we have life examples, it's hard to explain. So you have this project, and this one just happened, and I got involved with it because it was taking so long. So when I called the department to find out what was going on, I find out, first of all, that the award was given, and the person, the second bidder, didn't get the award, and they protested because the first bidder somebody didn't have a license.
Right.
Okay, so the entity looked at it and said, "You're right." So they rescinded and they awarded it to the second bidder. But the first bidder then went and filed a protest. Okay,
Yep.
so the department looked at it, and after 2 months, I believe, decided to send it to the AG. Okay, the AG got it.
That's not us.
And when I called and asked in October about the thing, they said, "Oh, the AG has it." I go, "What's going on with the AG?" "Oh, we don't know. The AG has it." So the AG had it for several months, August, September, October, November, 3 months before they didn't even know. The department didn't even know what was going on. I don't know if they hadn't called the AG or what. Okay, and so finally in January, I asked the AG what's happening to this protest in public, and a week later they brought it out, and then it went to DCCA, and within a week they dismissed the whole thing because it was a simple thing about no license.
Yep.
And so when you say they worked out, and you're working with the same AG, I mean not the exact deputy, but you're working with the same AG department. So I'm sure there's times within your times of 93 days, 66 days, 80 days, that, it might have sat at the AG for a while. I don't know.
Okay, we have 15 minutes. 15 minutes left. So can you quickly answer that? But I know that you have challenges, and I know you have a lot of presentation that we haven't gotten into, Chris, and I really thank you and your staff. But if we can look at some of the challenges, maybe, I don't know if we need to have another session,
Can we just jump into change orders?
let's we go into challenges and recommendations, and jump into that, because we do have your slides on the others.
All right. I'll just try to walk through this as quickly as possible.
Really quickly, because we don't have much time left.
Yes. So we talk about projects cradle to grave. This is what people typically think of in the silos, and they think that we just working in silos and the team doesn't work together. For your own edification, you can look through this on your own time, but I show all of the branches down below, and the bars across all of the events or the steps of a project show when each branch is engaged. So you can see that all of our team members for any singular project are interwoven and interactive throughout the entire length of the project. At no time do you have only one department, or one branch, excuse me, working on any phase of the project. What adds to the complexity of the project is we don't only do those projects, but we also look at these continuous functions and additional detailed functions within our responsibility. So I'll let you digest that on your own time. But we see that in all phases of the project, including planning, design. The most simple looking is construction. Of course, we all know that's very complex. We're also involved in post-construction warranty and maintenance issues. We also take care of non-project related work, not just leasing, but our own space authorization and assignment programs, grants and aid, and we're also the primary lead for the State Emergency Support Function 3. Anytime there's an emergency through HAIMA, our staff drops everything and we take charge of that for all of the state. We have unprogrammed support requirements for both governor and legislative requests. We are supporting these departments and agencies because they are suffering from shortfall in staffing and lack of the technical know-how they need. So we are actually compensating for their missing staff and helping keeping their programs prolonged and surviving. We also list central services who's having trouble now, so we try to help. And within our own leasing services branch, as I mentioned before, we are supporting a branch of one.
So do you have any challenges that you have recommendations for addressing? I think that's what we're also looking at. And that's the whole focus of our intent, is to understand what you're up against, as well as what our state is up against in terms of good procurement and contracting out. So do you have any specific recommendations on whether it's legislation, whether it's administrative or otherwise?
Okay, we do, and I promise I'm trying to get there. I'm just showing you that our clients are wide range and varied because
we have all of your document here before us. We all have copies we've made. So if you can just go to the challenges, because we are running out of time.
That shows why we cannot do one single person cradle to grave, right? Because the requirements are so varied that no one person can ever run a project from beginning to end and have the type of resources or capacity to do all of the projects that we have. Our big push really, and if I can find it, where did it go? Our request is for value, slide, is that value added? Slide number 40? Okay, value added focused. It's really what we've been saying. We don't need to change the procurement code. We need to improve utilization and understanding of the existing strengths of the code. And we'd be happy to meet with you and come up with ideas on how we can do that across agencies. We really desperately need support to fund and fill our vacancies so we don't have to rely on so many third-party services, because that still requires management and it does cost the state more money, and we don't want to support that. We do need support in getting recruitment and retention tools, whether it's increased pay, increased benefits, because now the state is not the best entity to work for anymore. Incentives like geographic preferences or increased shortage differentials for our neighbor islands. Flexibility in the ability to hire, and reinstating PRO, which was the ability for agencies to direct hire and not have to go through DHERD. We were much more successful when that program was available in the early 90s, that we could go out, headhunt, find our own qualified staff and hire them. That was much more successful for us. We want to emphasize succession and survival plans for the brain drain. One of the concepts that I was kind of just thinking about on my own was we have a co-op program for interns from the UH, where students would come and work for state agencies and learn about what it takes to work for the state. The problem was that did not get them their licensing. So if we can extend the co-op intern program to include private sector consultant firms who meet our criteria, they get a stipend for hiring the students, taking them through graduation and up to the point where they can get their license, and then they can come work for the state. That's how we feel the need, because we don't have enough state agencies that do the kind of design work that the kids need to get their licenses. And by kids, I mean young adults.
But why do you keep focusing on our licensing again? You know, we don't get out of that mode. We just talked about, I don't know how long, about how we need to shift and look
Even
at,
without the licensing, you're going to need minimum requirements to run a project.
Well,
Whether
again,
it's certain,
no, but you can make positions for project management that have different kinds of specifications that you need. I mean,
you still need to find the staff to fill them. You still need to find people to fill them.
I think what we're saying is look at what your needs are, what the competencies are. You don't always need an architectural engineering license to do some of the jobs that are really required where you're understaffed. And looking at that, it's easy enough to, start looking at what you need for these kinds of jobs and work with HRD, work with the university or the community colleges to find those kinds of staff that you can bring in and intern with you and promote up. So I think looking at it in a little bit more, a little broader context than just we need engineers or architects and, they got to get licensed and they can come in and we'll pay for their training. Look at what you need to do the job. I think that's where, we're focusing.
Respectfully, we did downgrade some of our positions down to engineer ones to hire kids right out of college. We took them as interns from college and tried to train them. It is not easy for them, even to train up, even if they weren't getting their license, to get to the point where they can run projects. It takes resources to be able to train them and assistance to get to that level of proficiency. And that's where I'm saying, if we can partner with the private industry and the colleges to get these kids learning this before they hit the job market and get them into the private sector where they can get some of that hands-on, and we work with the private sector to train because we don't have capacity to train, that's one way to solve it,
Well,
right?
So have you worked with the College of Engineering or the School of Architecture to ensure that maybe some of the kinds of courses they have are relevant to what you need or what the profession needs, which is what I'm sure they're looking for?
Yeah.
Have you met with anyone from the School of Architecture or Engineering College?
We're working closely with UHCDC. We're very familiar with the College of Engineering. The curriculum they teach is not the same as what it takes to run projects. So there is that shift.
But again, it's saying this is what we need. Can you start looking at what can be taught in their curriculum?
So Chris, are you saying that your engineers run the projects?
Yeah, yes, and architects.
Your engineers do run projects, but so why do we have to contract out so many, and why do we have so much change orders and so much extensions?
As I mentioned, the difference between what we hire and what we do is that what we hire are the hands-on people who actually do the drawing and write the specs. Our staff administers our work. We oversee that. We work with the clients and we make sure they produce. So it's very different. We administer, they produce the documents.
So I thought the consultants did that.
Yeah, the consultants put together the specifications and the plans. They do the detailed technical requirements. Our staff administers the work to ensure that it meets the overall requirements of the project.
But again, my question, if they're administering the work, why do we have so many change orders and extensions of projects?
We're administering the work. They're providing the technical details.
But you're not answering my question.
This is the summary of change orders that we've had just over the last 2 years. You can see that in construction, we had 85 projects with 630 change orders, but the total percent increase was 8.5%. Now, if you look at the bottom, the national average for change orders is 10 to 15%. So we're below that. If not for 3 projects with the Halava Correctional Facility, our total change order increase would have been just 6.7%. So actually, we're not as bad as it seems. The change orders might be small adjustments, but all in all, our rate is pretty decent, you know, far below the national average. We're doing the best we can to address that.
Well, I think, Chair, I would like,
Yes.
I mean, I have further questions. I know
Uh-huh.
we're limited in time, but I'd like to be able to have the committee send questions
Okay.
for a written response.
We shall
Thank you.
do that. Thank you, thank you. And if you submit your questions, we'll send them over to the comptroller for Chris. 2 more questions before we hit the hour.
Yes, so, Chris, I certainly agree that we need to look at increased benefits, increased pay, but with that, we should have increased accountability, and we should have consequences, because you can't have one without the other, and I think we will be hesitant to give raises when we see that, you know, we have lots of change orders, or we have a lot of issues with a lot of projects. So we really have to look at that. That's one. Second, I am requesting that we get from you in writing, what are those areas in which we don't need a law, and why we're not doing it, and what can we do to start to implement it? What is needed to implement it? Because to hear that we don't need a law, and yet you guys aren't doing it because you're saying they don't have the stomach to do it. Well, how do we overcome that? So can we get that in writing?
Yes?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Well, share one of our testimonies, actually. But yes,
Well, I
definitely.
don't want a testimony. I want something more detailed as to
Yeah.
why are we doing it, and what can we do to start doing it?
We will send you some of those questions for you to answer for us, Chris, to the comptroller. But we thank you. We are now out of time. Any parting words, because we are going to adjourn?
I just get one, Chair.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah,
Senator
in the
Favela.
future- Yeah, just going in the future, is there any way what we can do to not let people know how much money we have per project? And then I can guarantee you, we'll be listing on the change orders if they find out we only get $1.50 instead of $200.50. You see what I'm saying? These guys, they know what they're doing. They've been in the business long time. When they're putting in these bids, sometimes they put in a protest because they're all in cahoots. These guys are in cahoots, and I'm gonna tell you this: long time ago, Oahu Construction, Royal Construction, all those guys keep recycling each other and reusing each other's construction engineers and workers because that's how they used to bid on the jobs. So going forward, I think we should figure out a way that it should not be an open bid on how much project is. I get a project here. I want you to fix this bathroom or the prison. I like to know how much it will cost. I want you guys to put in your guys' bid. Why can't we do it that way? The state does it and the counties does it different. Why can't we have them put in the bids and then we pick them, whoever is the bidder, according to the price of what we have to spend? Why are we always telling them, hey, we get $150 billion to build a rail? And then look, what happened to the rail? Right? They spend every dollar before the rail even done.
Okay, that might be, so, Chris, you want to answer that, or we'll ask you that
We'll send it in writing.
in writing? We'll ask that in writing.
No, have her give it to us. in
Oh,
writing.
yeah, we'll send it, memo.
And the issue is we don't actually say how much money we have. However, it doesn't take much to go through the appropriations bill and see how much each project was appropriated. I think that's where a lot of the contractors get their information. It's all up for
Yeah,
public.
yeah. Thank you, Chris. Comptroller, thank you very much. Do you have any last words before we adjourn?
No, thank you, Senator Moriwaki and the committee for asking tough questions. Procurement's complex. But the only way we're going to resolve it is through this kind of collaboration. So we look forward to your questions, and we will answer them in earnest, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you. We will send you a list of questions from this hearing, from this briefing, that we will ask for your help on. Thank you.
And hopefully from what we've asked, you understand what the concerns are, and maybe you folks can be proactive in how to resolve them. So thank you.
Thank you, thank you. With no
Yep,
further
thank you.
business, this meeting is, or briefing is adjourned.